If there's one particular drill or exercise in pistol shooting that drastically improved my ability, it's this right here. This is what's called the blank paper drill. I have a blank target out there at 25 yards. It's actually the back side of a B6 repair center. So this is a repair center. It's the center of the bullseye target that you repair when you're shooting competitions. And if you flip this around, you have a blank piece of paper that's square. Now you can do this blank paper drill with just a regular piece of 8x11 letter paper. I do it all the time. But shooting on the back side of a B8 or a B6 like this is nice, because then you can score the target, and you can also use the scoring rings as references for the group size. The 10 ring is 3.3 inches, the X ring is 1.7 inches. But the story with this blank paper drill, I started shooting bullseye in November of 2023, and by July of that year, when I went to the national matches, I was shooting roughly master scores with my 22. And you know, I thought I was pretty good. And up until that point, I had never actually shot this drill before. I'd just practiced on B8s like this, or B6s like this, and B8s, slow fire at 50 yards, timed fire, and rapid fire at 25 yards. Up to that point, I was pretty happy with my progression. But after the national matches, I got invited out to John Shu's place. John Shu is the current national champion. I think objectively the best bullseye shooter in the country right now. He won all 3 major matches last year. And he invited me out to his house, and the first thing that we did before or after ransom resting my pistols to make sure they could actually shoot and were mechanically accurate and such, was he put me out at 25 yards and he told me to shoot a blank paper drill. Now, I'd heard of this drill, and in my mind I always saw it as like a beginner's drill, like Babby's first drill. And so I never actually practiced shooting at a blank piece of paper before. It's my first time ever shooting a blank piece of paper. And he told me to shoot a 10 ring size group. So I took my Hammerly 208. I took my time. He gave me no time limit or anything. All slow fire, all one-handed, of course, bullseye. And I shot my 10 shots, go down and score the target, measure it. It's actually an X-ring size group. So I go show John, and he's like, okay, shoot me another 10 ring size group on a blank piece of paper. And I was like, all right, that's easy. So I went down, shot another 10 ring size group, and I was expecting for him to tell me to move on at this point, but then he told me to go shoot an X-ring size group at 25 yards on the blank piece of paper. And I was like, wait, that first group I shot was already X-ring size. I mean, surely we're past this point. And he was like, yeah, it is, but if you can do it once, you can probably do it again. And besides, I just want you to shoot an X-ring size group. Now that the pressure was on for me to shoot that X-ring size group, I spent probably a day and a half shooting slow fire, 1 shot at a time, probably an average of 1 shot every 2 minutes, trying to shoot an X-ring size group until eventually I got it on this blank piece of paper. But what that taught me was it forced me to not really care too much about my aiming point, right? Not to care about this bullseye or where my sights are on the target. It forced me to align my sights and see what my sights were really doing. Because when you have a blank piece of paper down there, all you can see are the silhouette of your sights, especially since I was shooting from a covered firing line. And when you really focus on your sights like that, you can see what they're doing when you pull the trigger, when you apply certain pressure in your hand, and you're just focusing on your sights, focusing on your sights, focusing on your trigger pull. And that's really the most important thing when it comes to shooting a handgun accurately. It's that sight alignment, right? When your sights are perfectly aligned, it's a parallax-free aiming device, just like a red dot, right? When that red dot's in the center of the window, it's a near perfect representation of where the barrel is pointed. When your front and rear sight are perfectly aligned, it is a perfect representation of where the barrel is pointed. And so we're constantly trying to align our sights when we're trying to shoot accurately. And the only way to do that is to focus on our sights, see them nice and crisp, silhouetted against that target, and just focus on aligning, keeping that front sight centered, equal height, equal light. Now, we can mathematically work out exactly how important sight alignment is. It's not very hard. You essentially divide the distance that you're shooting at by your sight radius, and that gives you a factor that you can multiply any sort of misalignment between your sights to tell you how far of a point of impact change that'll be. On a standard government model 1911, you have about 6.7 inches of sight radius. And so that means any misalignment between the sights here at 25 yards is going to have about 150 times the effect on target. At 50 yards is going to have about 300 times the effect on target. And in bullseye, of course, we shoot slow fire at 50 yards on this target right here. So if your sights are misaligned by even a few thousandths of an inch, if you multiply that by 150 at 25 or 300 at 50 yards, I mean, we're talking about inches, enough to put you outside of a scoring ring, enough to put you out of the X ring, enough to put you out of the 10 ring, or even the 9 ring. And so what we're really focusing on is pulling that trigger in a way that keeps the sights aligned through the entire shot process. And it wasn't until I shot for a day and a half, slow fire on a blank piece of paper, that I really learned to look at my sights and not really care about where it's at on the bullseye, not really care about trying to fish that front sight towards the bullseye, which is something that new shooters typically want to do or naturally want to do, is we want to fish that front sight towards the bullseye. And of course, the other thing is we also want to look at the target, right? And so the blank paper drill, when I shot it for basically 2 days straight, it forced me to see my sights, see my sight picture, and place that sight picture with my perfectly aligned sights in the center of the target, right? In the center of the entire target frame, which if we were to relate that to a deer or a human being, we're taking our sights, we're aligning it, and we're shoving it in the center of that silhouette, and we're pulling the trigger in a way that doesn't disturb the sights. So that's my spiel. I'm gonna go ahead and shoot a little bit here at 25 yards. The main thing when we're shooting the blank paper drill, we're not really looking for score. Although you can score these targets, you flip them around, they're gonna have your score on there. We're mainly looking for group size. And the standards, of course, I hold myself to are the standards that are put forth on the bullseye target. So I like to shoot for at least a 10 ring size group at any given time. And unfortunately, center to center, it looks like I did have one shot that was outside of a 10 ring size group. So those ones center to center are 10 ring. This one shot took me out. 10 shots into a 10 ring size group at 25 yards is a pretty good standard to hold yourself to. If you think about it, that's 3.3 inches at this distance. At 50 yards, that's holding the black, right? Now, if you can hold X ring, that's even better, right? So I think this is probably the center of my group. This is about X ring. This is 1.7 inches. And I'd say 7 of those shots are X ring size, or maybe 6 of those shots. Let's see. Yeah, if we go by touching, if it's touching the scoring ring, about 6 of these shots are X ring. But if we go center to center, it's probably 4 or 5. So not my best target ever, not my worst, but just a casual blank paper drill to kind of show you what I do when I practice or when I shoot things for groups. Whenever I'm testing ammo or pistols, for example, iron-sighted specifically, I'll use a blank piece of paper like this. If I'm shooting a pistol with a dot for accuracy, I'll put a little small Sharpie mark just as a small aiming reference. Nothing says we can't use the blank paper drill to also practice rapid fire shooting. And I've got the Smith & Wesson Model 52. Perfect example of what Smith & Wesson used to make. Extremely fun gun to shoot. 38 special wad cutter. This gun's zeroed for 50 yards right now, so I'm printing a little high. So yeah, next time you go to the range, put a blank piece of paper out there at 25 yards, shoot it one-handed if you like, and take your time. Try to put down a good group. Focus on your sights, focus on aligning your sights. And to make a long story short, before I went to John's and practiced doing that blank paper drill, I was consistently in the mid 850s, maybe low 860s with my 22. That's out of 900 points. And after that exercise, after spending all that time just focusing on aligning my sights on that blank piece of paper, I was in the 880s, which is pretty high. You know, that's the difference between shooting expert, you know, high expert score, sometimes master, to shooting straight to high master. I basically skipped the entire master classification with my 22. Thank you all for watching. Thank you to my channel members and Patreon supporters. If you go and shoot a blank paper drill, let me know in the comments below how you did. And thanks for watching.